The gesture was almost gentle. "The Void will not follow our codes," he said quietly. The HFY year had passed since the simulation that changed everything. Tai Wu stood on the observation deck of the Allied fleet's newest battleship, watching as a squadron of redesigned cruisers performed combat drills in the space below. The ships moved differently now, faster, more unpredictable. Their pilots trained to think like humans. The gap in the armor was gone. Every new vessel in the fleet had been reinforced at the ventral section. But that was just the beginning of the changes. Tactical academies across the galaxy had been reformed. New courses taught unconventional warfare, asymmetric combat, and the kind of ruthless efficiency that humans had perfected over millennia of fighting each other. It was not easy for species raised on the codes of honorable combat to learn such things. Many resisted. Many thought it was wrong, but they were learning. Tai Wu was no longer just a student. He held the title of Strategic Advisor to the High Council, the youngest being ever to receive such an honor, and the first human. His face was now known across the Allied races. Some called him a visionary. Others called him a dangerous influence. Most simply called him the human who asked the question. The door behind him opened, and Drex walked in. The Telonian had changed over the past year. His scales had lost some of their aggressive gleam, and his eyes held a thoughtfulness that had not been there before. He and Tai Wu had become something like friends, united by their shared experience of watching everything they knew be turned upside down. "The Council is ready for you," Drex said. "They want your report on the new defense formations." Tai Wu nodded but did not turn from the window. "Look at them," he said, gesturing at the ships below. 6 months ago, those pilots could not have imagined fighting the way they fight now. They thought it was beneath them, dishonorable. Now they understand. "Some of them understand," Drex corrected. "Others still hate you for it." "I know." Tai Wu finally turned to face his friend. "I received another death threat this morning. That makes 14 this month." Drex made a sound of disgust. "From whom? Anonymous?" "As always, it doesn't matter. What matters is that we're running out of time." They walked together through the corridors of the battleship. Crew members from a dozen different species stepped aside as they passed, some nodding with respect, others looking away. Tai Wu had grown used to both reactions. The council chamber had been moved to this ship, a mobile command center that could be anywhere in the galaxy within hours. The threat of the Void had changed many things, including where the leaders of civilization felt safe. The 12 council members were waiting when Tai Wu entered. The ancient Eldari sat at the center as always. Its silver eyes followed Tai Wu as he took his place at the speaking platform. "Advisor Tai Wu," the Eldari said, "please give us your assessment of our readiness." Tai Wu activated a holographic display. It showed the current disposition of the Allied fleet, thousands of ships spread across hundreds of systems, all of them modified according to his recommendations. "We have made significant progress," he began. 70% of our capital ships have been retrofitted with improved armor configurations. 85% of our pilots have completed basic asymmetric combat training. New weapon systems designed for rapid deployment and unconventional attack vectors are being installed across the fleet. "But," the Eldari prompted, sensing what was coming. "But it's not enough." Tai Wu changed the display to show the edge of the galaxy. The shadow of the Void was larger now, closer. "Our latest observations suggest the Void will reach our outer territories within 15 years. That's faster than we expected. We need to accelerate our preparations. What do you recommend?" Admiral Korvax asked. The massive alien had become one of Tai Wu's strongest supporters, despite their initial conflict. Or perhaps because of it. "I recommend we stop treating this as a defensive operation," Tai Wu said. "We've been preparing to meet the Void at our borders, to protect our space, to fight a holding action. That's not how you survive an existential threat. He brought up a new image map showing potential strike points beyond the edge of the galaxy. We need to go to them, he continued, before they're ready, before they reach us. We need to learn what they are, what they want, how they think. And if necessary, we need to strike first. A murmur ran through the council. Several members shifted uncomfortably. You're suggesting we launch a preemptive attack? One of them asked. Against an enemy we do not yet understand? This goes against everything we have taught for 50,000 years. Yes, Tawu said simply. It does. The Eldari raised a translucent hand, silencing the murmurs. Explain your reasoning, advisor. Wu took a breath. This was the moment he had been preparing for. When I first came to this academy, I asked why your battleships had weak armor. You told me it was a reminder of the Dark Wars, a way to keep yourselves humble, a symbol of your commitment to honorable warfare. He looked around the chamber, meeting each council member's eyes in turn. But I've studied the Dark Wars since then. I've read the histories that were hidden, and I've learned something that changes everything. What have you learned? The Eldari asked. The Dark Wars were not just a conflict between civilized species. There was a third force, a threat from outside the galaxy. Beings that came from the void between stars. Beings that nearly wiped out all life in this region of space. The chamber went completely silent. You defeated them, Taewu continued. Barely, at a cost so terrible that you swore never to speak of it again. But you didn't destroy them. You pushed them back. And now, 60,000 years later, they're coming again. The Eldari's silver eyes closed. When they opened again, they held a sadness that seemed to span millennia. You are correct, the ancient being said. We thought we had more time. We thought they had forgotten us. We hoped foolishly, perhaps, that they would never return. But they have returned, Tawu said. And this time, we need to be ready to fight without limits, without rules, without the codes that have kept us civilized but also kept us vulnerable. He deactivated the display and stood alone before the council. On Earth, we have a concept called total war. It means fighting with everything you have, holding nothing back, being willing to sacrifice anything for victory. It's terrible. It's brutal. It nearly destroyed us more than once. But it's also the reason we're still here. The reason humanity survived everything our planet threw at us. Taewu stepped forward. You invited me here because you wanted to understand how humans think, how we fight, how we survive. Now, we survive because we're willing to do what others won't. We survive because when everything is on the line, we don't worry about honor or tradition or rules. We worry about tomorrow. He pointed at the map showing the approaching shadow. The void is coming. They don't care about your codes. They don't care about your traditions. They care about one thing: destroying everything you've built over 50,000 years. If you want to stop them, you need to fight like humans. You need to fight like survivors. The chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then Admiral Korvac stood. I have fought the human in simulation, Korvac said. He defeated me using tactics I had never imagined. Tactics that seemed dishonorable, even shameful. But they worked. And when I looked back at the battle, I realized something. He turned to face his fellow council members. I realized that honor means nothing if your people are dead. Rules mean nothing if your civilization is ash. The codes of honorable combat have served us well, but they were made for a galaxy that followed them. The void will not follow them. One by one, other council members stood. The Eldari was last. Taewu of Earth, the ancient being said. You asked a question that changed everything. Now you give us an answer we did not want to hear. But it is the answer we need. The Eldari extended its translucent hand toward Taewoo. "Lead us," it said. "Teach us to survive the way your species has survived. Help us become what we must become to face what is coming." Taewoo looked at the assembled council. A year ago, he had been a student, a curiosity, a primitive from a violent world. Now he was being asked to reshape the military doctrine of an entire galaxy. He thought of his family back on Earth. His mother, his father, his sister Yuna. They still did not know about the Void. No humans did, except for him. But if the Void reached the galaxy, if the Allied fleet fell, Earth would be defenseless. He thought of all the species that depended on the Allied races for protection. Billions of worlds. Trillions of lives. All of them looking to him for answers. He thought of the question he had asked on his first day. A simple question about armor plating. A question that had started everything. "I lead," he said finally. "But I won't lead alone." He sent a signal through his communicator. A moment later, the chamber doors opened. Drex entered first, followed by a group of beings from different species. Some were students Taewoo had trained over the past year. Others were officers who had proven themselves in simulations and exercises. All of them had learned to fight the human way. "This is my team," Taewoo said. "We will develop new strategies, new weapons, new ways of thinking. We will prepare the galaxy for total war. And when the Void arrives, we will be ready." He turned to face the window, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there. Word spread quickly through the academy. Within a day, everyone knew that the human had been summoned before the High Council. Rumors flew through the corridors like sparks from a fire. Some said Taewoo had been expelled. Others said he had been executed. A few closer to the truth said that something important was about to change. Taewoo spent the next 3 days in meetings with admirals and strategists from a dozen different species. They asked him endless questions about human warfare, about battles and tactics, about weapons and defenses, about the dark corners of human nature that made them so effective at killing each other. He told them about the world wars, about nuclear weapons, about submarines that hunted in silence beneath the waves, about ambush and surprise attacks, about the many times in history when a smaller, weaker force had defeated a larger, stronger one through clever thinking and ruthless determination. The aliens listened. Some were horrified. Some were fascinated. All of them took careful notes. On the 4th day, Taewoo was taken to the Academy's simulation center. It was a vast room filled with holographic projectors and neural interface stations. Here, students could fight battles against computer-controlled enemies or against each other without any risk of real harm. When Taewoo arrived, he found a crowd waiting for him. Hundreds of students filled the observation gallery above the simulation floor. Among them, he spotted Drex, watching with his yellow eyes. In another section, he saw the small gray-furred creature that had looked at him with curiosity on his first day. Professor Lum floated at the center of the room, along with several admirals from the Allied fleet. One of them, a massive being covered in metallic scales, stepped forward. "I am Admiral Korvax of the 3rd Fleet," the being announced. "I have commanded over 200 battles and have never been defeated. I have been asked to test the humans' theories." Taewoo nodded respectfully. "I am honored, Admiral." "Do not be honored yet," Korvax said. "You have made many claims about the weaknesses of our tactics. Today you will prove them. You will command a simulated fleet against mine. If you lose, your theories will be dismissed. If you win," Korvax made a sound that might have been a laugh, "but you will not win." Taewoo was led to a command station on one side of the simulation floor. A neural interface connected to his temples, and suddenly he could feel an entire fleet at his fingertips. 12 ships total, 4 destroyers, 6 cruisers, and 2 light carriers. It was a small force, meant for quick strikes and patrol duties. Nothing compared to what the Admiral would command. Korvax took his position on the opposite side. His fleet materialized in the holographic display 30 ships, including 5 full battleships of the Sovereign class. It was a force designed to crush any opposition through sheer power. The scenario is simple, Professor Lum announced. Both fleets will fight until one is destroyed or surrenders. Standard rules of engagement apply. Tae Wu spoke up. With respect, Professor, I would like to request a modification to the rules. The room fell silent. Admiral Korvax's scales rippled with what might have been annoyance. What modification? Professor Lum asked. I would like to fight without the codes of honorable combat. My fleet should be allowed to use any tactic, any approach, any method of attack. The simulation should not penalize dishonorable behavior. A murmur ran through the observation gallery. Admiral Korvax leaned forward. You wish to fight like a barbarian? He asked. I wish to fight like a human, Tae Wu replied. There was a long pause. Then Professor Lum's light pulsed in agreement. The modification is accepted. This simulation will not enforce the codes. Admiral, you may respond to any tactics the human employs. I do not need special allowances to defeat a primitive, Korvax growled. Begin the simulation. The holographic display activated, showing a sector of space with an asteroid field at its center. Both fleets appeared at opposite ends of the map, thousands of kilometers apart. Immediately, Admiral Korvax began arranging his ships in a classic battle line. His 5 battleships formed the center, flanked by cruisers on either side. It was a formation designed for direct, honorable combat. The kind of formation that had won battles for millennia. Tae Wu did something different. He split his fleet into 3 groups. The destroyers went in one direction. The cruisers went in another. The carriers hung back, hidden behind a cluster of asteroids. The human is dividing his forces, someone in the gallery commented. He's making himself weaker. He's making himself unpredictable, another voice replied. It was Drex, watching intently. Korvax's fleet advanced toward the center of the map, maintaining perfect formation. Tae Wu's ships scattered, disappearing into the asteroid field like fish hiding in coral. Where is he? Korvax muttered. His sensors were designed to track enemy formations, not individual ships moving erratically through debris. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Korvax's fleet reached the center of the map and waited. Tae Wu's ships remained hidden. The observers grew restless. Then Tae Wu struck. His destroyers emerged from the asteroids below Korvax's fleet. Not from the side, where the heavy weapons were aimed. From below. From the ventral section. From exactly the angle that the codes of honorable combat forbade. The destroyers fired everything they had at the nearest battleship. Their weapons were small compared to the battleship's guns, but they were aimed at the gap in the armor that Tae Wu had identified days ago. The battleship's shields held for 3 seconds. Then they collapsed. The reactor housing was exposed. A single torpedo found its way through the gap. The simulation showed the battleship exploding in a silent burst of light. The observation gallery erupted in chaos. Students shouted in a dozen languages. Some called it cheating. Others called it impossible. A few, just a few, called it brilliant. Admiral Korvax roared and turned his fleet to face the new threat. But Tae Wu's destroyers were already gone, vanishing back into the asteroids before the other battleships could get a clear shot. Where did they go? Korvax demanded. Track them. But while he was focused on the destroyers, Tae Wu's cruisers emerged from a different direction entirely. They did not attack the battleships. Instead, they targeted Korvax's supply ships, which had been left unguarded at the rear of the formation. In honorable combat, supply ships were never targeted. They carried food, fuel, and medical supplies. Attacking them was considered a war crime. Taewoo attacked them anyway. 2. Supply ships vanished from the display before Kovacs could respond. His fleet was now without fuel reserves, without repair capacity, without the support network that made extended operations possible. "This is madness," Kovacs snarled. "This is not how war is fought." "This is exactly how war is fought," Taewoo replied through the communication channel. "On my world, at least." The battle continued for another hour. Taewoo lost many ships. His cruisers were caught and destroyed. One of his carriers was cornered and blown apart. But every time Kovacs thought he had the human trapped, Taewoo's remaining forces struck from an unexpected direction. From below. From behind. From within the asteroid field where sensors could not reach. From distances so close that friendly fire became a risk for the larger ships. One by one, Kovacs's battleships fell. The mighty vessels designed to dominate direct combat found themselves fighting shadows. Their heavy guns could not track small, fast targets. Their armor was useless against attacks that came from the one angle it did not protect. Finally, only Kovacs's flagship remained. It was surrounded by debris from both fleets. Taewoo had only 2 destroyers left, both badly damaged. "Surrender," Taewoo offered. "There's no shame in it." "I will not surrender to a primitive," Kovacs replied. "I will destroy you with my bare hands if I must." The flagship charged forward, all weapons blazing. It was a magnificent sight, a vessel of incredible power making its last stand. Taewoo's destroyers scattered. One was caught by the flagship's guns and destroyed. The other, piloted in the simulation by Taewoo himself, dove directly toward the flagship's ventral section. Kovacs fired everything he had. Lasers and missiles and plasma beams filled the space between them. Taewoo's destroyer took hit after hit. Its shields failed. Its hull cracked. Warning lights filled his neural interface, but he kept going at the last possible moment. Taewoo launched his final torpedo. It flew true, straight into the gap in the flagship's armor. Both ships exploded at the same time. The simulation ended. The holographic display faded to black. The observation gallery was completely silent. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. Then another. Then another. The sound grew until it filled the entire room. Taewoo removed his neural interface and stood on shaking legs. He had one, but only barely. If this had been real, he would be dead. Admiral Kovacs walked across the simulation floor toward him. The massive alien scales were dull with what Taewoo realized was shame. Or perhaps something else. "You destroyed my entire fleet with 12 ships, Kovacs said. "I lost all but one of them doing it," Taewoo replied. "But you won." Kovacs shook his great head. "No one has ever defeated me. No one has ever fought like that. It was terrifying. It was survival," Taewoo said. "When you're outgunned and outnumbered, you don't fight fair. You can't afford to." Kovacs was silent for a long moment. Then he reached out with one massive arm and placed his hand on Taewoo's shoulder. The High Council chamber was located at the very top of the Academy's central tower. Taewoo had to take 3 different transport pods to reach it, each one carrying him higher into the structure until he could see the entire station spread out. Below him, like a city of light, 2 guards stood at the entrance to the chamber. They were Valorians, a species known for their warrior traditions and their unwavering loyalty. Each one stood over 4 meters tall, covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. They looked down at Taewoo as he approached. "The human," one of them said. It was not clear if this was a statement or a question. "I was summoned," Taewoo replied. The guards exchanged a glance. Then they stepped aside, and the massive doors behind them slid open. The chamber beyond was circular, with a domed ceiling that showed a live image of the stars outside. In the center of the room was a raised platform where Taewoo was clearly meant to stand. Around the platform, arranged in a semicircle, sat the members of the High Council. There were 12 of them, each representing a different species of the allied races. Taewoo recognized some from his studies. There was a Telonian, like Drex but much older, with scales that had faded to a dusty gray. There was a being of pure energy, similar to Professor Lum but far more powerful. There was a creature that looked like a walking tree, its body covered in leaves that changed color as it breathed. And at the center of the semicircle, sitting in the largest chair, was an Eldari. Taewoo's breath caught in his throat. The Eldari were the oldest species in the known galaxy. They had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. They had founded the allied races. They had written the codes of honorable combat. They were, in every way that mattered, the rulers of galactic civilization. This particular Eldari was ancient even by the standards of its kind. Its body was thin and pale, almost translucent. Its eyes were deep pools of silver that seemed to contain entire universes. When it spoke, its voice was soft but carried to every corner of the room. "Taewoo of Earth," the Eldari said. "We have been watching the recording of today's class. Please, step forward." Taewoo walked to the central platform and stood straight. His heart was pounding, but he kept his face calm. He had faced difficult situations before. He had been trained for moments like this. "You asked a question today," the Eldari continued. "A question about the armor on our battleships. A question that, according to our records, has never been asked before in the 50,000 years since the Sovereign class was designed." "Yes," Taewoo said. "I noticed a gap in the ventral plating. It seemed like a vulnerability." "It is a vulnerability," the Eldari said simply. The other council members shifted in their seats. The Telonian elder made a sound of surprise, the energy being flickered rapidly. "You know about it?" Taewoo asked. "Of course we know," the Eldari replied. "The gap was created deliberately. It was part of the original design specifications, written into the plans by the first architects of the Allied fleet." Taewoo did not understand. "You put a weakness in your own ships? On purpose?" The Eldari leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, young human, what do you know of the Dark Wars?" Taewoo searched his memory. He had read about the Dark Wars during his preparation for the Academy. They happened about 60,000 years ago. A series of conflicts that nearly destroyed all life in the galaxy. The details are unclear. Much of the history has been lost. "Not lost," the Eldari said. "Hidden. We hid it because we were ashamed. Because the Dark Wars showed us what we were capable of when we fought without limits, without rules, without honor." The Eldari closed its silver eyes for a moment, as if seeing memories too painful to describe. "In the Dark Wars, we used weapons that could erase entire star systems. We attacked from every angle, with every method, using every trick and deception we could imagine. We killed trillions of beings. We destroyed thousands of worlds. We came within a single battle of complete mutual extinction." The chamber was absolutely silent. Even the stars on the ceiling seemed to hold still. When the wars finally ended, those of us who survived made a vow. We would create rules for warfare. Rules that would prevent such destruction from ever happening again. The codes of honorable combat were not just about honor. They were about survival. They were about ensuring that war would remain limited, controlled, and ultimately survivable. "And the gap in the armor?" Taewoo asked. "The gap was a reminder," the Eldari said. "A deliberate weakness built into every capital ship. It was meant to ensure that no species would ever become too confident in their military power. It was meant to keep us humble, to remind us that even the mightiest vessel could be destroyed if the codes were broken. Tabu tried to process this information. But if an enemy knew about the weakness, any enemy who exploited it would be revealing themselves as a species without honor. They would be declaring themselves outside the protection of the allied races. They would face the united response of every civilized species in the galaxy. That's why no one attacks from below, Taewoo said slowly. Not because they can't, but because doing so would mark them as barbarians. Precisely, the Eldari said. The codes work because everyone follows them. Because the consequences of breaking them are too severe to contemplate. Taewoo stood in silence for a long moment. He understood now why his question had caused such a reaction. He had not just pointed out a design flaw. He had questioned the entire foundation of galactic civilization. But what if someone doesn't care about the consequences? He asked finally. What if an enemy comes from outside the allied races? From a species that never agreed to the codes? From a species that fights the way humans used to fight? The Eldari's silver eyes studied him. That is why you are here, Taewoo of Earth. That is why we finally agreed to accept a human into our academy. I don't understand. For 50,000 years, the codes of honorable combat have kept the peace. But we have always known that one day we might face an enemy who does not follow them. An enemy who fights without rules, without limits, without mercy. The Eldari rose from its seat. Despite its age, it moved with surprising grace. We have encountered such enemies before. Rogue species, isolated civilizations, beings driven mad by war or circumstance. Each time, we have defeated them. But each time, it has been difficult. Our admirals do not think the way such enemies think. Our tactics are designed for honorable combat, not for survival at any cost. You want to learn from us, Taewoo said. From humans. Your species terrifies us, the Eldari admitted. We have watched your history. We have seen how you fight. We have seen the weapons you have built, the horrors you have inflicted on each other, the depths of cruelty you have descended to in the name of victory. The Eldari stepped closer to Taewoo, close enough that he could see the swirling patterns of light in its silver eyes. But we have also seen your resilience, your adaptability, your refusal to surrender even when all hope is lost. You fight as if every battle is for survival, because for most of your history, it has been. We've had a lot of practice, Taewoo said quietly. Indeed. And that practice may be exactly what the allied races need to survive what is coming. A chill ran down Taewoo's spine. What is coming? The Eldari turned to the other council members. One by one, they nodded their consent. Then the ancient being gestured, and the star map on the ceiling changed dot. It now showed the edge of the galaxy. Beyond the spiral arms and the vast darkness between galaxies, something was moving. A shadow that blotted out the light of distant stars. A presence that was growing larger, closer, more distinct with each passing year. We call them the Void, the Eldari said. They come from outside our galaxy. We do not know what they are. We do not know what they want. But we know that they are coming. And we know that they will not follow our codes. Taewoo stared at the darkness on the map. For the first time since arriving at the academy, he felt true fear. How long do we have? He asked. Perhaps 50 years. Perhaps 100. We are not certain. But we must be ready. The Eldari placed a thin, translucent hand on Taewoo's shoulder. The touch was surprisingly warm. You asked why our battleships have a weakness. Now you know. But the true weakness is not in our ships. It is in our minds. We have forgotten how to fight without rules. We have forgotten what it means to face an enemy who wants only to destroy us. And you think humans can help you remember? I think humans never forgot, the Eldari said. That is your greatest strength. And perhaps, if we are lucky, it will be ours as well. Te Wu looked at the shadow on the map, at the council members watching him, at the ancient beings standing before him. He thought of his family back on Earth, his mother, his father, his sister Yuna. He thought of all the humans who had no idea what was coming, who were living their lives day by day, unaware of the darkness approaching from between the stars. I'll help, he said. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. The Eldari nodded slowly. We know. That is why we chose you. The meeting was over, but Tai Wu knew that his real work had just begun. The silence in the classroom was absolute. Every student had stopped moving. Every eye, sensor, and organ of perception was fixed on Tai Wu. Even Professor Lum's crystalline body had gone dark for a moment before flickering back to life. Tai Wu remained standing, his fingers still pointing at the holographic battleship. He could feel the weight of hundreds of stares pressing down on him. But he did not lower his hand. I asked, he repeated calmly, why are your battleships missing armor in this location? Professor Lum drifted closer to the display. For a long moment, the ancient being said nothing. Then its light pulsed in a pattern that the translator rendered as confusion. Missing armor? Professor Lum asked. The Sovereign-class battleship is the most heavily armored vessel ever constructed. Every centimeter of its hull is protected by quantum-reinforced plating. Not here, Tai Wu said. He walked down the steps toward the central platform. The other students watched him in stunned silence. Here, along the ventral section, running from the forward reactor housing to the secondary power distribution node. The armor is at least 40% thinner than the rest of the hull. He reached the platform and touched the holographic image. With a gesture he had learned during his training, he rotated the ship and zoomed in on the section he had indicated. The gap was clear now. A long, narrow strip where the armor plating was noticeably reduced. Professor Lum examined the image. Its light flickered rapidly in what seemed to be distress. This is within design specifications. The ventral section requires less protection because why? Tai Wu asked. The professor hesitated. Because attacks from below are not conducted. Now it was Tai Wu's turn to be confused. Not conducted? Why not? A murmur ran through the classroom. Students shifted in their seats. Some looked angry. Others looked uncomfortable. The green-scaled Drex stood up from his seat. Because it is dishonorable, Drex declared. Battle is fought between equals, facing each other with dignity. To attack from below, to strike at a vessel's underside like some crawling vermin, it is unthinkable. It violates the ancient codes of warfare. Tai Wu looked at Drex, then at the other students, then at Professor Lum. You're saying that no one attacks from below. Because it's rude? Not rude, Professor Lum corrected. Forbiddance. The codes of honorable combat have governed warfare between civilized species for over 50,000 years. They ensure that war remains orderly, controlled. They prevent the kind of total destruction that nearly ended all life in this galaxy during the Dark Wars. Tai Wu nodded slowly. He understood now. The aliens had created rules for war. Rules that everyone followed. Rules that had become so natural, so deeply embedded in their thinking, that they had stopped questioning them. On Earth, there had been rules too. The Geneva Conventions. Laws of armed conflict. Principles of proportionality and military necessity. But when survival was at stake, rules had a way of being forgotten. What if someone doesn't follow the codes? Tai Wu asked. What if an enemy attacks from below anyway? The classroom erupted in noise. Students called out in their various languages. Some laughed. Some shouted. Some made sounds of disgust. The translator struggled to keep up with the chaos. Professor Lum raised a tendril of light, and silence returned. Such an enemy would be branded as uncivilized, the professor said. They would be cast out from the community of species. No one would trade with them, ally with them, or offer them any assistance. They would be alone against the entire galaxy. But they would win the battle, Taewoo said quietly. The words hung in the air. Drex stepped down from his seat and approached Taewoo. The Telonian was much larger than the human, nearly 3 meters tall, with claws that could tear through metal. His yellow eyes burned with anger. You speak of winning, Drex said, but you do not understand what winning means. Victory without honor is no victory at all. It is shameful. It is the act of an animal, not a warrior. Taewoo met the alien's gaze without flinching. On my world, he said, we have a saying. In war, there is no second place. A dead warrior has no honor to defend. Your world, Drex spat. Your world is a ball of mud that has been at war with itself for its entire history. Your species has killed more of its own kind than most civilizations have lost in their entire existence. You know nothing of true warfare. You're right, Taewoo admitted. Humans have killed many humans. We have fought countless wars over land, resources, beliefs, and sometimes for no reason at all. We have done terrible things to each other. He paused and looked around the classroom, meeting the eyes of as many students as he could. But we survived, he continued. We survived because we learned that the enemy will not follow your rules. The enemy will do whatever it takes to destroy you. And if you are not willing to do the same, you will lose. This is exactly why humans should not be here, another student called out. It was a being made of crystalline structures, similar to Professor Lum, but younger and more angular. They are violent, unpredictable. They will poison our traditions with their barbarism. Taewoo turned to face the new speaker. I did not come here to poison anything. I came here to learn. But I also came here with knowledge of my own. On Earth, we have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have made every mistake possible. We have learned, often painfully, what works and what does not. He gestured at the holographic battleship still floating above the platform. This ship is beautiful. It is powerful. It represents millions of years of advanced engineering. But it has a weakness. A weakness that any human naval cadet would notice in their first year of training. Professor Lum's light had dimmed to a thoughtful glow. You speak as if this weakness is obvious. Yet no student in 3,000 years has ever raised this question. Because you trained them not to see it, Taewoo said. You taught them the codes. You taught them how war is supposed to be fought. And they accepted those teachings without question. And humans do not accept such teachings? Professor Lum asked. Taewoo thought of his home. He thought of the long history of Korea, caught between powerful empires, invaded again and again, surviving through adaptation and determination. He thought of Admiral Yi, who had defeated a fleet many times larger than his own through clever tactics and unconventional thinking. Humans question everything, Taewoo said. It is how we survive. The classroom was quiet now. The anger had faded from some faces, replaced by something else. Not agreement, necessarily, but perhaps thought. Drex still stood close to Taewoo, but he had not moved to attack. His yellow eyes studied the human with a new expression. Let us say you are right, Drex said slowly. Let us say this weakness exists. What would you do about it? Taewoo looked at the battleship again. In his mind, he was already planning attack vectors, calculating approaches, considering how a small, fast ship could exploit the gap in the armor. I would fix it, he said. I would add armor to the vulnerable section. I would redesign the reactor housing to eliminate the weak point. And then? Professor Lum prompted. And then I would think about what other weaknesses might exist. What other assumptions have been made? What other rules have been followed so long that everyone has forgotten why they exist? The professor's light pulsed slowly, rhythmically. In the silence, Tae-woo could hear his own heartbeat. Class is dismissed for today, Professor Lum announced. I need to consult with the academy leadership. Students began to file out of the room. Some glared at Tae-woo as they passed. Others avoided looking at him entirely. But just a few nodded at him with something like respect. Drex was the last to leave. The big Talonian stopped at the door and turned back. Human, he said. Tae-woo, you have made enemies today. Many will not forgive you for questioning our ways. I know, Tae-woo said, but you have also made some think. That is, not nothing. Drex paused. I still believe your species is dangerous. But perhaps dangerous is not always bad. He left without another word. Tae-woo stood alone in the empty classroom, looking up at the holographic battleship. The gap in the armor seemed to glow in his vision, a flaw that no one had seen for millennia. He wondered what would happen next. He did not have to wonder for long. 3 hours later, a message arrived at his quarters. He was summoned to appear before the Academy's High Council. The real questions were about to begin. The shuttle landed with a soft hum on the silver platform of the Galactic Naval Academy. The doors opened, and Tae-woo stepped out into the bright light of 3 suns. He carried only a small bag on his shoulder and wore the plain gray uniform that Earth had given him for this journey. He was the first human to ever set foot in this place. The Academy floated above a gas giant, held in place by technology that humans could not yet understand. Towers of crystal and metal rose into the purple sky. Ships of all sizes flew between the buildings. Tae-woo had seen pictures before, but standing here now, he felt very small. A tall creature approached him. It had blue skin, 4 arms, and eyes that glowed like small stars. Its name was Vorak, and it was assigned to guide Tae-woo to his quarters. You are the human, Vorak said. It was not a question. Yes, Tae-woo replied. My name is Tae-woo. Vorak looked at him for a long moment. Follow me. They walked through wide hallways filled with students from dozens of different species. Some had scales. Some had fur. Some floated in the air. Some walked on many legs. All of them stopped to stare at Tae-woo as he passed. He heard whispers in languages his translator could not fully catch. But he understood enough. Words like primitive and violent and short-lived floated through the air. Tae-woo kept his eyes forward and said nothing. The Galactic Naval Academy was the most respected military school in the known universe. Only the best students from each species were allowed to attend. For 300 years, no human had been invited. Humanity was considered too young, too aggressive, and too dangerous. But things had changed. Earth had made contact with the Allied races 50 years ago. At first, the aliens had ignored the small blue planet. Humans were just another primitive species, they said. They would destroy themselves soon enough. But humans did not destroy themselves. Instead, they learned. They watched. They built. And when a rogue fleet attacked Earth's colonies, the humans fought back with a fury that shocked the galaxy. The battle lasted only 6 hours. The rogue fleet was destroyed completely. Not a single enemy ship escaped. After that, the Allied races paid more attention to humanity. Some were curious. Some were afraid. And some, like the leaders of the Naval Academy, decided it was better to study humans up close than to wonder about them from far away. That was why Tae-woo was here. He was 23 years old. He had graduated at the top of his class from the Korean Naval Academy on Earth. He had served 2 years on a patrol ship near the outer colonies. His commanding officers said he was smart, calm under pressure, and very good at finding problems that others missed. The Allied races had asked Earth to send their best student. After much debate, they chose Tae-Wu. His mother had cried when he left. His father had simply nodded and told him to make Earth proud. His younger sister, Yuna, had hugged him tightly and made him promise to send messages every week. Now, walking through this alien academy, Tae-Wu wondered if he had made the right choice. Vorak led him to a small room with a window that looked out at the stars. The bed was too large for a human, and the desk was at an uncomfortable height. But Tae-Wu did not complain. "Classes begin tomorrow," Vorak said. "The morning meal is served at the 6th hour. Do not be late." "I understand," Tae-Wu said. "Thank you." Vorak paused at the door. "Human," it said, "many here do not want you. They think your kind is dangerous, unstable. They think you will fail." Tae-Wu met the alien's glowing eyes. "Then I will prove them wrong." Vorak made a sound that might have been a laugh. "We shall see." The door closed, and Tae-Wu was alone. He sat on the edge of the too large bed and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, past countless light years, was Earth, was home. He thought about his family, his friends, the green mountains of his homeland that he might never see again. But he also thought about why he was here. Humanity needed eyes. They needed knowledge. They needed to show the galaxy that humans were more than just violent primitives. Tae-Wu unpacked his bag. Inside, along with his clothes and personal items, was a small book. It was old and worn, passed down through his family for generations. It was a collection of military strategies from Earth's history. Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, Yi Sun Sin, the great admirals and generals who had shaped human warfare for thousands of years. That the aliens thought they knew everything about war. They had been fighting among the stars for millions of years. Their ships were massive and powerful. Their weapons could destroy entire planets. But Tae-Wu had read their histories. He had studied their battles. And he had noticed something strange. For all their technology and experience, the aliens fought in very predictable ways. Their battles followed rules. There were codes of honor, agreed-upon tactics, and traditional formations that had not changed in centuries. On Earth, war was different. War was survival. War was adaptation. War was doing whatever it took to win, even if it meant breaking every rule. Tae-Wu did not know if this difference would matter, but he planned to find out. The next morning, he woke early and made his way to the meal hall. The room was enormous, filled with long tables where students of all species sat and ate. The noise was overwhelming: clicks, hums, growls, and sounds that humans could not even hear. Tae-Wu found an empty corner and sat down with his tray of food. The meal was strange but edible. He ate quietly and watched the other students. A group of cadets at a nearby table kept looking at him and whispering. One of them, a creature covered in dark green scales, finally stood up and walked over. "You are the human," it said. Tae-Wu nodded. "Yes, I am Drex of the Telonian Empire. My people have ruled the outer sectors for 10,000 years. We have fought in 100 wars and won them all." Drex leaned down, bringing its face close to Tae-Wu's. "What has your species done?" Tae-Wu thought for a moment. "We survived," he said simply. Drex made a harsh sound. "Survived? That is nothing. Every species survives until it doesn't." "Perhaps," Tae-Wu said. "But we survived each other." Drex did not understand the answer. It turned and walked back to its friends, laughing. But one student at the table did not laugh. It was a small creature with gray fur and large black eyes. It looked at Tae-Wu with something that might have been curiosity, or Perhaps Respect.Tay-Wu finished his meal and made his way to his first class. The room was shaped like an amphitheater, with seats rising in circles around a central platform. A large holographic display floated above the platform, showing images of ships and star maps. The instructor was a being of pure light, contained in a crystal shell. His name was Professor Lum, and he had been teaching naval strategy for over 3,000 years. Today, Professor Lum announced, we will study the design of the Allied fleet's capital ships. These are the most powerful vessels in the known galaxy. They have defended our civilization for millennia. The holographic display changed to show a massive battleship. It was beautiful in a terrible way, all sharp angles and heavy weapons. Its hull was covered in thick armor plates that could withstand almost any attack. Tay-Wu leaned forward in his seat and studied the image carefully. And that was when he saw it. A small gap in the armor. A place where the plating was thinner. It ran along the bottom of the ship, near the reactor housing. It was barely visible. Easy to miss if you were not looking for it. But Tay-Wu had been trained to look for such things. He raised his hand. The entire class turned to look at him. Professor Lum's light flickered with surprise. Yes, human? You have a question? Tay-Wu stood up slowly. His heart was beating fast, but his voice was steady. Professor, he said, why are your battleships missing armor here? He pointed at the gap on the holographic display. The room fell completely silent.